During the holiday season, there can be a rush to get it all done. Buying all the gifts, attending all those endless holiday parties, and decorating your home. And so much cooking. And then the season is over in a flash. It can be hard to just slow down. This is Where We Live from Connecticut Public Radio. I'm Catherine Shen. Today, we're talking about gathering, slowing down, and staying in the present, even if it's just for one meal. Later in the hour, we're going to listen back to our conversation with cook and author Samin Nosrat. You might know her from the best-selling cookbook Salt, Fat, Acid, Heat. Her new book is Good Things, Recipes and Rituals to Share with People You Love. But first, we hear from two local chef owners who are bringing Lebanese cuisine and the art of slowing down to enjoy a good meal to their communities. There are nearly 9,000 Lebanese Americans in Connecticut. Last week, the Israeli military said it was targeting members of the armed Palestinian group Hamas in an airstrike that killed more than a dozen people in a refugee camp in Lebanon. Joining us now is our very own Tess Terrible. She's a senior producer of Where We Live. Tess, welcome back to the show.
Thank you so much, Kat.
So tell us about how this all started.
So, Kat, as you know, we have been covering the war between Israel and Hamas since the conflict started in 2023. And we've also been covering its impact on neighboring Lebanon. In 2024, the United Nations did report that Lebanon's government estimated over 1 million people were displaced due to conflicts in Israel. Conflicts with Israel. And we wanted to make sure that we took the time on our show to talk about how it was impacting people here in Connecticut. And what listeners might not know is that we have a pretty huge Lebanese American community here in Connecticut. It's definitely a community that's not often highlighted. So when this happened back October 2024, we started to reach out to members of this community. And as a producer, I reached out to faith and cultural centers in Connecticut. But we're pretty big food people here, Kat, and it kind of dawned on me that we have some truly spectacular Lebanese and Mediterranean restaurants here in Connecticut. Maybe we could hear their stories. So we ended up reaching out to two of these chef owners. We spoke with Reem Hadir. She's the chef and founder of Lebanese Mediterranean Kitchen and Bar in Watertown. And we also spoke with George Nujim. He's the chef owner of Nujim's Mediterranean Cuisine in Winstead. And at the end of that conversation with these chefs and these restaurant owners, as what happens a lot here on Where We Live, they invited us to come visit their restaurant and have a tour, take a mic kit with us, and see, where this all started for them, learn more about their stories. And it's been a pretty crazy news cycle.
I'm nodding my head very hard right now.
From 2024 into 2025. But a year later, we did have some time to visit them. And I was able to put aside a day this last September to hear their stories and go to their restaurants and, most importantly, taste their cuisines.
Well, I think one of the reasons why we want to go at this angle is food is such a universal language.
Yes.
And it was such a beautiful conversation about finding community and reconnecting with roots, having had to leave their homelands because of such dire reasons. So going beyond that, was there something about Lebanese cuisine that you were particularly interested in?
Yeah, absolutely. I have a few Lebanese friends, and I grew up in an Italian-American family, and from what I've noticed from talking with George and Reem and others I know in this community is that there's a huge food culture. Food is huge. It's so centered to that culture. And Italian Americans are also big food people, as our listeners probably know, especially if they are Italian American. We enjoy good food with spending time with people and taking our time to do so. And so I felt very drawn to Lebanon and learning more about this culture that I really have no direct ties to, but I feel very close to. And as we're going to learn this hour, the history of Lebanon is rather complex. This is not the first conflict and not the first airstrike that has hit this region. The country has gone through multiple civil wars and conflicts, but it's these flavors and these traditions and these routines of gathering that have survived throughout generations. And the food is also absolutely delicious, so I can't say no to that.
No one can say no to that. And so we're about to hear from George and Reem. So set the scene for us. Where did this tour start?
Yeah, started with food, of course. You're about to hear from Reem Hadir again. She is the chef and founder of Lebanese Mediterranean Kitchen and Bar in Watertown. She told me that she was actually pretty hesitant to opening a restaurant at first because she knew it was going to be a huge commitment. Reem comes from a family of restaurant owners, starting with her dad. And so she talked to me a little bit about that history. And then we got to take a tour of the kitchen.
At the beginning, I was like hesitant because, of course, growing up in restaurant business, you have no life. Okay, you're like married to it. You're always there. So I saw that always with Dad. As much as he tried, obviously, to always be with us and everything, but he always had to go to work. He always had to be there in long hours. A lot of holidays, there's no holidays because, he has to be there for the holidays. This is made
That's a different color hummus that I've ever seen. That's
absolutely,
so cool.
because guess what? No preservatives, nothing. Made in house every day. Not like the ones that you buy from the store that's been sitting in a box, God knows how long, and then like until it got to the shelves, and then how many days on there. Here, you're getting the hummus every day. We don't even have walk-in coolers here, mind you. If you look, this is the only cooler we have. That means you're prepping morning for night, and night, like you can, like morning, you have from the night before, you prepped some vegetables for the morning to start, but then in the morning you're prepping for some for the lunch, okay, and you're prepping all like your soups, rice, stuff like that, stacking chicken, beef, and then in the downtime you're prepping for the rest of the night because you don't have a walk-in cooler and then like 5-6 hummus made. You make exactly what you need for the day, for the shift, and that's how much you can fit anyway. Because that's why here we tell people everything is fresh, because that's all you see. There's no other fridges.
It's amazing to hear that there's no walk-in cooler in the restaurant, but how amazing it is that everything is fresh. So you know that it's good and how much heart and soul is put into it. So you've been listening to Reem Hadir, who's the chef and founder of Lebanese Mediterranean Kitchen and Bar in Watertown. So Tess, you were there with her. We heard some cooking going on. Mm-hmm. Please tell me you got to try something.
Oh, yes. Lots of sampling happened that day. So much hummus tasted. And I think when you think about Mediterranean cuisines like Lebanese food, hummus obviously comes to mind. It is a staple of this cuisine. And as our, food trends have changed, hummus is now available at every single grocery store that you can possibly go to. And that wasn't always the case, but there has been kind of an increase of interest in this cuisine. But I will say that this hummus was unlike anything I've ever tasted, because most of the hummus I've had is grocery store hummus. This hummus was rich and fluffy and light all at the same time. And that really speaks to the cuisine, because Lebanese food is all about fresh food, ingredients, and spices. You're getting really light, fresh flavors like garlic, olive oil, lemon, and staples. And these are staples from Mediterranean cuisine. It's really rich food, but it's also very health conscious.
I mean, it sounds really delicious, and yet I feel like I wouldn't feel too bad after I eat a tub of hummus because it's good for me.
Yeah, you know what? I mean, hummus is a primary food. I would completely endorse you eating a tub of hummus.
Absolutely. And so we're going to hear now from George Nujim. He's the chef owner of Nujim's Mediterranean Cuisine in Winstead.
The machine that we're looking at right here, I designed it and I had it built in Lebanon for me so we could produce hummus. And it's based on a small machine like we used to make it at home, and we made it bigger. We used to make like 7-cup batches, and now we do 300-pound batches all at once. Probably about 20 years ago, there was the Mediterranean cuisine that started to become like the healthiest cuisine to eat. To be honest with you, the Lebanese food is the most flavorful, delicate food that you could have. and it seems like the community at large, not just Lebanese people, seems to adopt it and love it and go with it. So we're very fortunate this way. Like in my restaurants, you're not going to find butter.
Yeah.
I have a pasta dish that's made with heavy cream and chimichurri, has no butter, has no eggs, has no cheese, and it's very rich and flavorful without all the fat.
So how shocking was it to hear that he uses no butter, especially for a culture like us here? We use so much butter
We use so
in
much butter.
everything.
In
Sometimes
absolutely
in coffee
everything.
nowadays.
Yes. Yeah. Oh my gosh, I forgot about that trend. Yes. So no butter. Yeah. I mean, it was shocking, but also not really. I mean, Lebanese food is all about the olive oil. If you go to Lebanon, you will see the olive groves and the olive trees everywhere. And yeah, it was just so funny to hear that from George, that he tries to limit so much dairy in his restaurant. And I had mentioned to George during that tour, and you don't hear me there, that I am actually watching my dairy intake because I'm getting old and too much dairy is now too hard on my stomach.
I think a lot of people resonate with that.
Yeah, definitely. And, at the end of our time together, George brought me some baklava to sample and assured me that even in this rich dessert, which is just one of my favorite desserts, and it's so rich, filled with honey and sugar and flaky crust, it has no butter in it, and it was one of the best sweet treats I've ever had.
And earlier you shared what you've learned about the history of Lebanon, and this is a region that has gone through a lot of conflict. What did George and Reem share with you about this?
Yeah, I just kind of want to pause there and think about that, because one of the biggest takeaways I got from interviewing George and Reem is that our food isn't just about the flavors. It's about endurance, about the history of a nation. The country of Lebanon has gone through so much civil war and conflict. Recently, as we said at the top of the show, there was an Israeli airstrike on a refugee camp in Lebanon that killed many people and injured even more. But in speaking with Reem and George, something that they both told me, that Lebanese people in the country, people still find a time to gather, even in the most dire and hard circumstances.
And here's Reem and George again.
I think the Lebanese people have lived all their life. There's some sort of conflict going on, some sort of something. There's either the economy's bad, or it's politics, or this or that. Something's going on always. But the Lebanese people are resilient. They want to live. They live day by day, and they go to work. They take care of their families. They take rest. They sleep. They wake up. They go out, and then they do it all over again. They don't sit down and cry over it.
The Lebanese people are very strong. They've gone through civil war, invasions, and occupations, but life keeps going on. Especially when you get to the countryside, it's where I come from. The family style, they are the people, your neighbors. Even though during the Civil War they were your enemy, now we live in harmony together, and I hope it lasts, and I could bring all my friends someday to see it. That's how exciting it is to be in Lebanon.
I am not a very political person, but I can tell you, every good or bad in this world comes from your own house, okay? Is how you're raised. We teach in our house, as Lebanese all, whether you're Christian, Muslim, or whatever other religion. We have obviously a lot of religions in Lebanon, and the major ones are Christian, Muslim, and Druze. But we all teach our kids as Lebanese that you have God, you have your family, and that's what matters. And Sunday in Lebanon, you go around everywhere, okay, and everybody's sitting with their family on the table, and people inviting, okay, my cousins, your cousins, you have, let's say, your grandparents' house, everybody's there. Everybody. Sunday, every house is filled with family.
So it sounds like staying connected to family and friends is huge.
Yeah, I think it is huge. It's something we really kind of don't always think about when we're in the hustle and bustle. I think it's kind of a lost art to carve out time in your day or in your week to connect with the people you love, to carve out that time to intentionally slow down. And, George and Reem are big proponents of slowing down. And in this next clip, George is going to describe something really special he does in his restaurant to encourage his patrons, encourage his customers to slow down, take their time with their meal, and just sit back and enjoy.
My philosophy is I want people to come in, enjoy themselves, take their time, and let the time stop. That's the reason why I have a clock that doesn't move in the restaurant.
I didn't even notice that.
I had one here and one in the back, so I wanted everybody to think it's still early.
Yes.
I love that trick. And actually, I feel like when you're having a good time, when you're focused and you're talking to your friends and family, time does kind of stand still. So what do you think this experience have taught you?
Yeah, it's so funny. As journalists, Kat, we're obviously deadline people, and the idea of a clock that doesn't work actually gives me a little bit of anxiety.
I was actually wondering if you were going to say that.
Yeah, that might give me a heart attack if I saw something like that in our newsroom. But I'm not no stranger to eating at my desk every day. We are always on a timeline, a deadline, a time crunch. I think this goes beyond journalists, but the idea of slowing down to enjoy food, even during chaotic times, is a real learning lesson for me. When George mentioned to me that he does something really special for patrons. He does something called a 3-hour kind of tasting meal where people can come in and sample almost everything that's on their menu, but they also have to understand and accept, with no exceptions, that this is going to be a 3-hour endeavor, and that's quite a big time commitment, and most of us don't spend that much time eating out or eating with friends. It was really unreal to me to think about, taking that amount of time to slow down and eat your food. I'm not sure if our colleagues and our bosses here would allow us to take a 3-hour lunch gap, and maybe after this they will, knock on wood. George and Reem are incredibly hardworking restaurant owners. They work almost every day of the year, but they themselves still find time to sit with their families and enjoy a meal, and they encourage others to do so. To say that we've had a difficult year is an understatement. I think everyone is feeling impacted by the conflict in our world right now. But Lebanese dining is all about finding ways to still celebrate life, gather with friends and family, and eat excellent food, even under really challenging circumstances.
Well, and I will say, even here in the workplace, we do, when we can, take time out. Like, we leave our desks. We have this space that we call the living room, where we would gather either with our foods that we brought from home, or maybe some of us will get takeout, and we'll take some time to chat with each other. And those are really great moments. And for an industry, for a lifestyle, I think here we're so focused on productivity, but that kind of gathering is productive as well, if you want to think of it that way. But it's also a way for our brains to rest, and then off to the next show.
Yeah. We've, our team here at Where We Live, we've become really intentional in doing that and taking care of each other in the downtime we have between doing this live show that you hear every day. And it's just been a really important self-care activity for us. But this experience just inspired me to do it even more.
And so we have one final clip from Reem to share. Could you set this up for us?
Yes. So Reem, again, is the owner of Lebanese in Watertown. And when I entered her restaurant, there was a sign that said, "Habibi, come to Lebanese." Habibi is a special pet name, and I knew about it before I asked her about it, but I still wanted to hear from Reem what this means to her.
Habibi means, this is an endearment word that we use, probably all Lebanese and Arabs and non-Arabs that have friends that are Arabs know what Habibi means. Habibi means my love, my dear. So like here, how you would say, "Hey honey, hey dear," this, that. Habibi is like my love, but I would tell you Habibi as a friend, as a husband, as a kid, as just a person walking into my restaurant. "Hey Habibi," So Habibi is the word to kind of use with everybody. So Habibi, come to Lebanese.
That is really nice.
Yeah.
And it adds such a more personal touch to the restaurant that you're going to. So when you know the story, I feel like the food tastes, I don't want to say it's extra better, but just has a level of something more special when you go.
Yeah. Knowing you're being served food by someone who cares about you and cares about your experience is pretty special.
Well, and we're going to hear from other voices later, but is there anything else that you would like to leave with our listeners today after sharing your story with George and Reem?
Yeah, I definitely encourage our listeners to check out these restaurants. You will have a really memorable evening. You know, Thanksgiving is coming up. If you still don't know what you're doing, maybe check out these restaurants. They might have some Thanksgiving specials going on. And maybe just start to think about what you can do to carve out time to slow down in your workday, in your work week, whatever that looks like, and just hold space to be with the people you love. I'm hoping to do more of that this season and the year to come.
Well, that sounds like the perfect plan to go into Thanksgiving with. Tess Terrible is a senior producer here at Connecticut Public and Where We Live. Tess, thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me, Kat.
You can learn more about these restaurants by visiting our show page at ctpublic.org/wherewelive. And coming up, we'll listen back to a special conversation with James Beard Award-winning Samin Nosrat. She's the author of Salt, Fat, Acid, Heat. She joined us in studio to talk about her new book, Good Things, Recipes and Rituals to Share with People You Love. This is Where We Live. Stay with us.
يا ستي يا ختيارة يا زينة كل الحارة حبيبي يلي بحبه ناطرني بالسيارة يا دادا يا ختيارة يا زينة كل الحارة حبيبي يلي بحبه ناطرني بالسيارة بحبه ما بدي تخبي وعيونه خلت قلبي مثل رماد السيجارة برم بم بوم برم برم بم برم بم بم برم بم برم برم بم برم بم.
This is Where We Live from Connecticut Public Radio. I'm Catherine Shen. Samin Nosrat taught a generation of cooks and food lovers to lean into their intuition. Her book, Salt, Fat, Acid, Heat, helped many understand the building blocks of flavor. Her new book is a departure that inspires the chef in all of us, not only to cook great things, but to share them with the people you love. Today, Samin is with us in studio. So Samin, we've been talking a lot about food and people and how sometimes it's not just about the food, it's about the people as well. And seeing that a lot of people really loved Salt, Fat, Acid, Heat was it provided both structure and a lot of inspiration for creativity. And so how did you continue that theme of providing recipes and guidance, but also allowing freedom for your readers?
Do you mean in the new book? Yeah. It was definitely a journey to get to this new book, in large part because I initially set out to write another sort of philosophical tome like Salt, Fat, Acid, Heat that would help people sort of navigate the kitchen and decide what to cook at any given time, given a handful of constraints. And once I started to research that, I realized it was such a huge undertaking, and I kind of melted down under the pressure of it. And I said, I can't do this. Take the money back. I can't write this book. It'll take me 20 years. And eventually somebody said, I don't know why you make this so hard for yourself. You know, you always feel like you have to reinvent the genre. You can just write a book of recipes. And I was like, have you even met me? Like, I would never do that. I wrote a whole book teaching you to cook without having to rely on recipes.
Right.
Why would I write a book of recipes? And that feels so sort of constraining to me. And I actually, in some ways, I feel like recipes can be very trapping, both to me as the person who makes them and to you as the person who uses them. And so I have this kind of sense of pressure that I put on myself. If I'm going to give you something to follow to the letter, I want to guarantee that your result is going to be so good.
Actually, did you grow up with recipes?
No.
Okay.
No.
Because I also did not.
Yeah. And so my mom we had one cookbook in our house, which is sort of like the equivalent of the Persian, like, Joy of Cooking.
Okay.
That was it. And then, and my mom did not cook from recipes. She basically taught herself how to cook from taste and memory and from calling her mom back in Iran. And I didn't grow up in the kitchen. My mom wanted me to be doing my homework. She did not want me to like end up laboring in a kitchen. And so,
jokes on you.
And so, and then when I started cooking in a restaurant at Chez Panisse, where the menu changes every day, you know, on the one hand, the chefs gave me a stack of cookbooks and they told me to familiarize myself with them as the sort of foundational texts of our kitchen. But that was not what I saw reflected at work. At work, I got to work every day, and cooks sort of knew how to make everything under the sun. And so the chef would present a menu, a completely different menu every day, and say, today we're making this, today we're making that. And then the cooks would be assigned their dish and go make it.
Right.
No matter what it was. And nobody was saying, oh, 4 tablespoons this, 2 tablespoons that, 375.
I'm not going to lie. I did not have any measuring utensils until college. And the only reason why I have measuring cups is to measure my oatmeal.
Oh, I was going to say, was it your rice? Yeah. Yeah.
Close.
Yeah. And so, And so I spent a lot of time figuring out how to sort of communicate what I saw happening in the restaurant kitchen to home cooks, which became salt, fat, acid, heat. And so the idea that what's on a single page, if I follow it, will produce the same result for me in California, you in Connecticut, somebody in France, you know, anywhere you are, is kind of, I'm like, that is such a huge and flawed premise. Or that you'll even get the same result time after time. Because so many things in our cooking are constantly changing. You know, even the oranges we buy at one time of year versus another time of year taste different. So how can the orange juice even be the same? And multiply that times 1 million ingredients and 1 million steps. And so I don't know if you can tell by this point, but I'm very neurotic and I really overthought this. And I put all this pressure on myself to deliver a very good recipe. And also, the other thing for me is when I'm teaching people how to cook or like trying to guide them, what I want to do is show you how you actually know so much more than you think you know.
Right.
And so if you're learning how to make a stew, you also implicitly know how to make a soup and a braise and all of the different names for all of that in all of the cultures around the world. Because to be totally honest, like there's only a handful of ways that humans have figured out how to cook stuff all around the world. And there's just our sort of like spins that we put on them, you know?
Right.
And so it's like, I want to connect all those dots for you. So you understand, like today, maybe you're making something from Taiwan, but tomorrow you can use those same techniques to make Mexican food.
Right.
And what I've realized is people don't always want all of that information. It doesn't actually help. And so what's been interesting is in the wake of sort of the show coming out and the book coming out is so much of the feedback I get is, wow, salt, fat, acid, heat really made me a much better cook. Like it changed the way I look at cooking. But if an equal, if not greater proportion of the feedback is, I just made your chicken. Or we make your focaccia once a week at my house. Or that lasagna is our special event dish. Or this rice means so much to me. And so as I started to see the feedback and understand that like how people were actually interacting with what I had offered was almost always a recipe. I was like, oh, maybe actually the way I can be of the greatest service is by offering recipes, even if I find them sort of innately flawed. But if I can explain what my tension and my friction with them is, maybe that'll be, if nothing else, helpful for me. And then I can choose different structures of recipes to convey, you know, to communicate this information. So for like a more complicated dish that maybe has more steps or is involves baking or precise measurements, recipes in the book tend to look really, you know, familiar, and they're a list of ingredients followed by a list of steps to follow. But there's also sort of visual matrices that we created so I can connect a lot of those dots for you. There's some recipes that I write in a sort of a multi-paragraph story about a silly thing that I made once. There are, you know, and then there are just some sort of recipes almost in that joy of cooking format where I love the joy of cooking because they cram so much information into in such little space, but they don't separate out the ingredients list. They just sort of bold ingredients. And so what made sense for any one particular category of cooking is what I sort of used in Good Things. So it isn't actually the same page after page. it's very much like each chapter has its own purpose.
Well, it sounds like it's more storytelling, less like a manual.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And also, like, I worked really hard with my, like, very close collaborator, recipe tester, over the course of 5 years to test and retest them to make sure that they would work. So the recipes do work, but I just had to get to a place where I was, like, proud and comfortable, with what it was that I was putting out.
Well, it sounds like the feedback helped you actually let go of the perfectionism in some way. Because it feels like a mix, like the stew that you're making here.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Is a mix of riffing and perfectionism.
Yeah, for sure. And it's not even, I think also part of my job as a recipe writer, I feel like, is to give you the right amount of information and the right specifics to both feel confident, like I tell you the things that are sort of like non-negotiable, right? But I also sort of do my best to point out the moments when you can maybe veer from what I've written or what I'm suggesting by giving sensory cues, by giving, very options of variations, by saying, oh, this is where you can be loose. You can use any other herb if you don't have this one, and it won't make that much of a difference. Or, no, it's absolutely essential. Do not substitute the Parmesan,
You go around the world, really, the recipes. And why was that important for you to be able to explore that?
I feel like the world, like the food is the best part of the world, like
the universal language.
Yeah. And it is, there are so many delicious things that I have, been exposed to just whether by sort of physically traveling to a place or by, traveling through a cookbook and or going to a restaurant and eating their food. And so for me, I kind of feel like I'm a little, I don't know, a magpie or something, collecting like all of the little delicious things in my life. And all I ever want to do when I find something really good is share it with people. And so I'm like, oh my God, did you know this?
Right.
Like, that's the sentiment of this book is like, oh my God, like these are the things I've collected. And so they're not just from one place. They're from sort of my broad experience in life. That's the other thing I really feel about the book is that it is a very accurate sort of portrait of my life in this moment. It's a document about like who I am. It's, pictures of my actual home, my actual stuff, the food we actually eat and cook, the recipes that I really make and share on a daily basis. And that's why almost none of them are like project cooking. There's a small handful of things that might take a whole day or a whole afternoon, but almost everything else is just something that I make because I had this laying around, and I feel like that is what I sort of came to realize, going back to what I was saying before about trying to be a little bit nicer to myself or not beat myself up as much. It's a little bit of like, well, if I find pleasure in these small things, like maybe you will too. So like, instead of like spending my time trying to control and worry about what you're going to do with these recipes or this book once I give it to you, if I shift my approach and think of it instead of as like a gift that I'm offering you in sort of my cupped palm, then it's up to you what to do with it, what you will like, and you can take from it what serves you and leave the rest behind. And that was sort of how I got to a place where I was like, felt like I could give it,
Well, I feel like this kind of goes back to the feedback that you were saying earlier when you're hearing from people like, oh, I make your recipes every week, or we use this for a party. And you already answered this question in some ways, but clearly it's so intentional in terms of you really encourage people to use ingredients that are in their pantries.
Yeah.
They're not super duper complicated. I think we get it. Well, we get it into our heads. That,
we all do.
If it's a recipe, then it's a lot of ingredients. It's very complicated. It's going to take a whole day. But I think what really resonates with both of your books is we can all do it.
Yeah, that's very much at the heart of it is. And I think really hard about that when choosing the recipes and the ingredients in the recipes is I am very aware that I live sort of in the like agricultural haven of the Bay Area, and that there's so much available to me pretty much year round. But I always try to place myself outside of that when I'm shopping for the ingredients to test with, when I'm choosing, how many steps to ask you to do, because I am very aware, like, as a person who's also followed recipes in other books for 20-something years, Like, I've had my own experience of being like, oh, I'm really excited. I'm going to try and make this thing. Oh, I have to make 2 special trips to specialty stores to get those things.
Right.
And then I have to spend a whole afternoon making it. And then you do it and it's not that good. And that's a real disappointment and like, I feel betrayed and angry sometimes. And so I don't want to cause that feeling in anyone. So I will say, it's not that I have no obscure things, but if I'm going to ask you to do it, there's a reason why, and I'm going to tell you the reason why, and also give you the option to leave that out if you want.
Right.
And
it's probably not only for that one recipe.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
More with author and cook Samin Nosrat after a short break. Her new book is Good Things, Recipes and Rituals to Share with People You Love. You can join the conversation on Facebook and Twitter at Where We Live. From Connecticut Public Radio, this is Where We Live. I'm Catherine Shen. Stay with us. This is Where We Live from Connecticut Public Radio. I'm Catherine Shen. This hour, we're speaking with James Beard Award-winning author Samin Nosrat. You might know her from the best-selling cookbook, Salt, Fat, Acid, Heat. Her new book is Good Things, Recipes and Rituals to Share with People You Love. It's a collection of recipes and essays that might just inspire you to gather with those people you love to share a meal with, or perhaps even start a ritual. So rituals, huge theme in your new book, Samin. What was the process like building your own sort of dinner party or dinner rituals with the people you love?
It definitely happened sort of by mistake, or
as
maybe
most great things do.
Maybe not mistake, but let's say serendipitously. I would not say it was some like great intention, even though for many years I did have my own dream of creating a weekly dinner ritual inspired by some that I sort of participated in with other friends when I traveled. But my life was, I was traveling so much. I also really had this excuse that I felt was kind of hypocritical, which I believed. I was like, oh, I could never do that because I don't have a place for anyone to sit, because I lived in a really little apartment and I was like, what, I'm going to make them sit on the ground next to my coffee table? Even though I would always tell people like, it doesn't matter. People can sit on a couch. It doesn't. Yeah. And so I kind of had this whole list of excuses. One of them also was, I think the classic night for this type of gathering is Sunday. People always talk about a Sunday dinner.
Right.
And I thought about my own life, and most of my friends are parents of small children. And so thinking like, could I actually get people to commit to coming over week after week on a Sunday evening when like with their kids, when like that seems impossible. Getting people to put their kids in a car, come over with or without food. Like it just, anything with kids on a Sunday before school night feels like a big ask. And so I had a lot of doubt about it, and I was really sad. And that was honestly something I really felt in that loneliness that I was talking about, that like sense of loneliness that I had, that I've like done all this work, I've achieved all this stuff, and now I'm sitting here and there's nobody to share it with. So I really wanted a dinner ritual. I just didn't know how to go about making it happen. And then one day I was testing a recipe for I was trying to make like pork al pastor, which is a complicated street food that I was trying to sort of adapt for making at home, which maybe was not the greatest idea. And so I kept failing. And every time I failed, each time I'd make this like 4 or 6 pound pork shoulder.
Right.
So then I had all of this pork I had to eat. So my friend came over right in the midst of one of these trials, and she saw that I was really like down on myself, and she's like, what's going on? And I said, well, like not only is this going to be horrible and not work, but then I'm going to have to eat it for the next 27 meals by myself. And she was like, oh, we'll help you eat it. You can bring it over to us. And this was sort of in the like post-vaccine era where I was just sort of starting to think about, oh, I can go over to people's houses again. So it felt in some ways like a lifeline. I was like, really? When can I come?
Right. You got to thank the pork.
Yeah. And so she said, just come on Tuesday. And so I like packed up the pork and I came on Tuesday, and we shredded it and we made perfectly good tacos. They were not the thing I had imagined, but it kind of didn't matter. It was just like a very good meal with our kids and our other friends who sort of live in the backyard. And it was so nice and natural that we were like, oh, well, should we just do this again next week? So we kept doing it. And this group of friends, I want to stress, was not like if you had given me a piece of paper and said, write down the people you want to create a dinner ritual with, I wouldn't have necessarily thought of these folks. They're my friends. I've known them for a long time, but they were not like my innermost circle by any means. But what's happened now, that's been almost 5 years. I think it'll be, I guess we're going on close to 5 years with these dinners, is that they have become my closest family. They have become at the center of my life. And this Monday dinner, we always sort of jokingly say is like our religion, or it's church. And in fact, we just had our first book events like right before I left home last week, and the kids came, and afterward they were texting me and they were saying like, oh wow, like I get it. Like, 42 isn't the meaning of life. Monday dinner is the meaning of life. And to see kids like really sort of understand and look forward to this thing is so special. And it's not, again, I want to be clear, like, sure, some of the time I was testing recipes, or I'll cook something that I'm so excited to cook and bring it over. But I definitely don't do everything. I don't determine the menu on my own. We all do it together. Sometimes I don't even make anything. And I think that has given me a whole new understanding of what it means to like be like of hospitality, what it means to be generous, how to accept generosity, how it is to be part of something, and how it is to like create something together. And that has been like such a gift to me in my life.
When I was going to say, following the theme of 42, I think don't panic is another one for what we're talking about today, especially when you're talking about not like you're making a meal for everybody, but then there's a sense of consistency and communication. Everyone has to kind of be on the same page in order to do this, right? And so I think for many of us, as you mentioned earlier, everyone's busy. Everyone's living their lives. And so it's really hard to get anyone together and fit everyone into a schedule. So I think you kind of touched on this in some way, but for our listeners that might want to try this out with their friend group, where should they start? Because it doesn't have to be anything big.
No, it doesn't have to be anything big. And I've thought a lot about this over the years, and I did put a rubric in the book for like how to create your own, because I do think we sort of accidentally stumbled into some things that have made it a lot easier for us, that seem a little bit unconventional. So I think when people think of, let's start a group meal, a lot of times they're like, well, it should be a potluck and we should share the responsibility of hosting. And I would not call what we do a potluck at all. And even more importantly, it has always been in the same house on the same day at the same time. And because of that, there is so much less that we have to communicate about. There's not the sort of, you don't have to do a spreadsheet. You don't have to do a doodle poll. You don't have to figure out when people are available. We all know that Mondays are holy for us, and that is sort of cleared on our schedules. It's in our Google Calendar. And so because of that, then everyone is committed. And so I think having full buy-in from everyone is really important. And I think also just reducing the amount of variables. And because of that, then that allows us, if somebody has a surplus of something, then they make all of the soup for us that week or whatever. And so really the communication on the text thread is almost entirely about fun stuff. It's about what are we going to have? Who's going to come join us at the table? What fun thing is happening this week? Instead of like, does so-and-so have mayonnaise or whatever? Like there's so much less of that. And so, and because it's in the same house, now we all are familiar with that kitchen. We're familiar with the place. And we've been able to create sort of like a lot of things to look forward to, which I also think is really key. I think if you think of this as something you have to do and a chore, it's not going to work. It has to feel like a gift. And so however that is for you, however you can make it feel special and something to look forward to is really important. So, for us, like we're all big gardeners. And so we'll send the kids out into the yard to make a flower display or just a vase of flowers, or maybe your thing is music and you've made a special playlist that you play every week. Or maybe like you're a big wine person and you've been saving all these fancy wines, and like, why save them? Like,
Right.
start drinking them, or whatever. But if each time is an opportunity to look forward to rather than a chore you have to get through, I think that is really crucial. And a lot of the things that I sort of read about ritual and came to understand about ritual and understood that we had sort of accidentally stumbled into are based on sort of the scaffolding that a lot of the time religion will give us, right? Religion, one of the beautiful things of religion is that it creates a community where there is full buy-in. And so if, everyone knows they have to go to the temple of worship on Friday or Saturday or Sunday. And so there's not a convincing, because you just understand that's part of your week. And so in that way, I think we sort of have created that for ourselves.
What does it mean for you to be able to find that, especially, adult Samin looking back at maybe kids Samin when you felt lonely? I mean, even when you were an adult, you felt lonely, but now that you found your community, and I hope that it's continuing.
Yeah,
right?
it does. Yeah, I'm missing a few for this tour, but I get the updates. I'm like, I find out. I know what they're all eating. No, and I'm so happy to have this thing that I get to be a part of and get to celebrate and get to sort of feel like I have a home to return to. And I will say, like, I did not approach this book tour without a fair amount of anxiety, in large part because the last time I sort of returned home with my life sort of turned upside down. And the other day, as I was leaving my house to sort of embark on the first stop, I closed the door and I said a little prayer to myself. I was like, okay, it's going to be different this time. And I really do think I have done a lot of work in my life to create something that I'm grounded in and rooted in. And that, I have this home now that's part of this little community. I have this amazing group of people I have dinner with every week. I have, my dog and my girlfriend. I just have other things other than work that are propelling me in life. And I think that is so helpful.
Well, I appreciate your time, focus, and attention.
Oh,
and
thank
the
you.
generosity of your storytelling with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. You've been listening to Samin Nosrat. She's a cook, teacher, and author of the James Beard Award-winning book, Salt, Fat, Acid, Heat. And her new book is Good Things, Recipes and Rituals to Share with People You Love. Listeners can find our full conversation with her on ctpublic.org/wherewelive. I'm Catherine Shen. Today's show is produced by Tess Terrible. Our technical producer is Dylan Reyes. Download Where We Live anytime on your favorite podcast app. And thank you all so much for listening, and happy cooking and happy eating, everyone.
Yeah.